You have heard the story of Texas told the same way for years. Endless growth, families pouring in from every direction, builders racing to pour foundations as fast as the concrete would dry. For a long time, buying a house here did not feel like a risk. It felt like getting in on a winning secret. But every story has a turning point. Across Texas, for sale signs that used to vanish over a single weekend are now sitting through entire seasons. That easy confidence is gone. Price cuts are no longer rare, they're built into the conversation. In city after city, the housing bubble that looked unstoppable only a few years ago has quietly started to burst. This is Discover the Nation. If you own a home in Texas, if you are thinking about moving here, or if you're just trying to understand where the next wave of pain might hit, this is the breakdown you need. We're counting down 10 Texas cities where the bubble has already popped and the fallout is working its way through neighborhoods street by street. Before we start, do one thing for your future self. Subscribe to Discover the Nation so you never have to guess what is really happening in the housing market. We bring you the stories long before they become headlines. Ready to see where the air is rushing out the fastest? Let us begin. Number 10. San Marcos. San Marcos used to feel like a secret in the hill country, a river town between Austin and San Antonio, anchored by a university. For years, people called it the middle choice. Not as expensive as Austin, not as sprawling as San Antonio, but tied to the same highways and job corridors. Then the boom years turned that quiet middle ground into a speculation zone. Investors saw student demand, tourist traffic, and service jobs and decided San Marcos could carry almost anything they bought. New subdivisions on the edges filled with buyers who worked in Austin or San Antonio but wanted more house for the money. Very low rates made the monthly payment look manageable, even when prices pushed past what local wages could support. Steady enrollment, tourism, and a constant flow of people on the interstate were treated as guarantees. Once rates jumped and everyday costs climbed, the weak spots showed up quickly. Students moved farther out or back home, and commuters grew tired of burning time on the daily drive. The cushion that made those stretched payments feel safe began to thin. You can see the shift in whole neighborhoods. Houses near campus that once sparked bidding wars now sit while parents and investors calculate whether the rent will cover the mortgage. Out on the fringe, similar three-bedroom homes compete for buyers wondering if they should keep renting and wait for prices. A few owners who counted on constant appreciation to bail them out are discovering that the appraisals no longer agree. San Marcos does not fall apart in one dramatic moment. It softens at the edges. More for sale signs on streets that used to turn over quietly. More listings with price reductions and closing cost offers. More conversations about tax bills, insurance, and whether they jumped in too late. For a town marketed as the safe, affordable middle lane of the Texas Triangle, that slow realization is what a bursting housing bubble feels like from the inside. Number 9. El Paso. El Paso never felt as crazy as Austin or Dallas, and that is why many people thought it was safe. Prices looked modest compared to the rest of the state. The lifestyle felt steady. The bubble here was not about millionaire tech workers. It was about regular families finally deciding to stretch for ownership while money felt cheap. During the boom years, that stretch did not look dangerous. You could lock in a low rate, drive an older car for a few more years, and make it work. Investors noticed the same math. They saw a border city with strong cross-traffic, a large renter pool, and prices that still looked like a bargain on paper. So they piled in, especially in newer subdivisions on the east side, where starter homes and rental-friendly floor plans went up quickly. Then the environment changed. Rates moved up. Everyday costs ate more of every paycheck. At the same time, border-related jobs, logistics, and trade all faced their own cycles of uncertainty. For a lot of buyers in El Paso, there was no extra cushion. There was just one paycheck and one mortgage, and not much room for error. When a car breaks down or hours are cut at work, There is not a second safety net sitting in a stock portfolio. Now you can see the effects in slow motion. Listings stay active longer. Sellers accept concessions they would have laughed at a few years ago. New construction that once had a waiting list is now throwing in closing cost help and cosmetic upgrades to keep deals alive. Investors who assumed they could always flip or raise rents every year are discovering that tenants are saying no and simply moving across town. The result is a city where the price ladder no longer feels like it only goes up. El Paso does not collapse in dramatic headlines. It adjusts in a more painful way. Owners realize that their house is worth less than they expected. Their equity feels thinner, and the plan to trade up or cash out is suddenly out of reach. Families stop talking about the next neighborhood and start talking about how to hang on where they are. When that realization hits enough households at once, the bubble is already history.
Number 8. Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi sold a dream that felt almost too perfect. Beach access, warm breezes, and home prices that looked cheap compared to coastal cities in other states. For buyers fleeing higher costs on the coasts, this part of Texas looked like a once-in-a-lifetime arbitrage. Live by the water, pay a middle America mortgage, and let appreciation do the rest. That dream pulled in out-of-town cash, second home buyers, short-term rental investors, people who had spent their lives in cramped city apartments and suddenly saw a way to own something with a yard and a view. The local economy did not transform overnight, but housing prices did. They floated away from local wages and anchored themselves to distant money. Entire blocks near the water shifted from primary residences to properties that lived around booking calendars. The bubble was always fragile because it depended on those outside buyers staying enthusiastic. They did, until rates jumped, insurance costs exploded, and storm risk became impossible to ignore. Many out-of-state owners started comparing their carrying costs to their actual rental income and realized the numbers did not work. Some watched new local rules chip away at short-term rental profits. Once that math breaks, loyalty to a pretty view is not enough, especially when a single storm season can erase years of profit. Now you can find pockets of properties where the for sale signs in the for rent signs are competing with each other. Some houses are empty in the middle of prime season. Price cuts show up on listings that used to assume they could ask whatever they wanted. Local families who bought near the top are watching values slide toward levels that match the local paychecks again, and that journey is not painless. Neighbors talk about rising insurance deductibles, flood zones, and repairs that never seem to end. Corpus Christi is discovering what happens when a housing market leans too hard on lifestyle and not enough on fundamentals. The water is still there, the sunsets are still beautiful, the postcards have not changed, but the assumption that buyers would pay any price for that lifestyle is already burst, and now the market has to rediscover what the coastline is actually worth to people who live and work there year-round.
Number 7. Round Rock. Round Rock used to be the practical answer to the Austin question. When prices inside the city started to look insane, people pointed 30 minutes up the highway and said, go there instead. You still get access to the same tech corridor, the same regional jobs, the same buzz, but with a more reasonable mortgage and a suburban lifestyle that feels familiar. That story pulled in a huge wave of buyers during the boom. Tech workers who wanted a yard and a game room. Remote workers who thought they would only have to brave Interstate 35 a couple days a week, investors who saw fast-growing rooftops and assumed rents would follow forever. Builders followed all that demand with entire neighborhoods of new construction, priced as if the pipeline would never slow down. Then the Austin engine started to sputter. Tech layoffs, hiring freezes, and a more cautious stock market took some of the shine off the metro. At the same time, mortgage rates climbed, property taxes surged with each new appraisal, and insurance costs shook people who live anywhere near potential flood or storm zones. A payment that once looked like a stretch now looks like a threat if the bonus does not hit or the promotion gets delayed. Round Rock is now showing what a bursting bubble looks like in a suburb tied so closely to a bigger star. Listings that assumed automatic overflow demand from Austin are sitting longer. New build communities are offering closing cost help and rate buydowns that private sellers cannot match. Buyers walk through one four-bedroom house and then find three similar options with price cuts within a short drive. The fear of missing out has turned into a quiet confidence that there will always be another listing tomorrow. For owners who bought in 2021 or early 2022, this is where the pain becomes real. Comparable homes are closing for less than what they paid. The move-up plan that relied on easy appreciation does not pencil out anymore. Some will stay put and ride it out. Others will accept smaller gains or even losses just to reset their lives. Round Rock is still a desirable place to live, but the belief that it was a one-way ticket to guaranteed equity has already been exposed as part of the bubble story, not the permanent reality.
Number 6. Frisco. Frisco was the poster child of the modern Texas dream. Professional sports headquarters, master-planned communities that look like marketing brochures brought to life. If you wanted to believe in endless growth, you just had to drive through a few of those brand-new neighborhoods. Sidewalks, playgrounds, and top-ranked schools made it feel less like a suburb and more like a promise that life would keep moving up and to the right. That story worked until reality caught up. Builders kept going long after the easy money cycle ended. Streets of new houses appeared in every direction, priced for buyers who were supposed to keep arriving in bigger numbers every year. For a while, they did. Then rates jumped, stock markets wobbled, and some companies quietly pulled back on hiring. At the same time, property taxes climbed with each new appraisal, and association dues reminded owners that the lifestyle came with a permanent monthly toll. Frisco is now dealing with the aftershock. The same new construction that once made the city feel like a fresh start has turned into its biggest vulnerability. Rows of nearly identical houses compete for a smaller pool of qualified buyers. Builders have tools to move inventory that ordinary sellers do not. They can buy down rates, throw in upgrades, and cover closing costs. Every one of those deals pulls the market down a little further. Families who bought resale homes in 2021 or early 2022 are now in the harshest position. They paid top dollar for properties competing with brand new neighbors offering better terms and shinier finishes. On paper, a lot of their equity has already evaporated. For households that plan to refinance, tap cash out, or move up again in a few years, that missing equity is not just a number, it is a broken plan. In some pockets, the choice to sell now would mean writing a check just to walk away. Frisco does not look like a ghost town. The stadium lights still glow, the restaurants are busy, and the schools are strong. What has changed is the math underneath that lifestyle. It looks like a beautiful place where the numbers no longer match the story, where families quietly ask themselves if the payment, the taxes, and the constant competition from new builds are still worth what they thought they were buying. A glittering lifestyle perched on top of a market that has already let the air out.
Number 5. Fort Worth. Fort Worth has always wanted to be the steady partner in the Metroplex. Where Dallas chased image, Fort Worth leaned on identity. Stockyards, culture, historic neighborhoods, and a slower feel. That grounded reputation convinced many buyers the local housing market was different, somehow safer. You were not just buying into a price chart, you were buying into a city that told you it knew who it was. The bubble here built slowly. Instead of one sudden spike, you had years of strong appreciation layered on top of each other. New suburban developments spread south and west. Older neighborhoods gentrified one street at a time. Investors came in quietly, remodeling houses and counting on constant demand from families priced out of Dallas and newcomers chasing the Texas story. For a while, it seemed like values could rise forever without breaking anything. Now the signs of strain are everywhere for those willing to look. In older areas, the cost of renovations has soared, and some flippers are finding that buyers at the new, higher price point simply are not there. Materials, labor, and financing all cost more, but paychecks for many households have not kept up. In newer suburbs, long drives on crowded toll roads are wearing people down, especially now that they are paying more for everything from groceries to childcare and gas. Fort Worth also faces quiet competition from both directions. Some buyers are drifting farther out in search of lower prices and more land, even if that means leaving the city limits. Others are looking back toward inner neighborhoods where they can sometimes trade space for a smaller payment and a shorter commute. That puts pressure on the middle of the market, the very place where most of the recent appreciation piled up. Fort Worth still has strength. Jobs, culture, and a distinctive sense of place are not going away. But bubbles burst not only through collapses in bad neighborhoods, they burst when people realize that the payment they signed up for assumes a level of economic comfort that no longer exists. For a growing number of households, the projected raise or promotion that would make the mortgage feel light has not arrived. The result is a city where pricing power is slipping away from sellers block by block, while everyone adjusts to a new reality in which Fort Worth is still desirable, but no longer guaranteed to float gently upward every year.
Number 4. San Antonio. San Antonio was supposed to be the affordable Texas city that never lost its balance. You had the Riverwalk, the missions, military bases, healthcare hubs, and a cost of living that looked gentle compared to Austin. San Antonio cannot be in a bubble because it starts from a lower base. You were buying value, not hype. That logic held until it did not. As Austin became the national poster child for tech-driven price insanity, buyers and investors flowed south. They saw San Antonio as a discount version of that same story. Prices rose faster than local wages. Hot neighborhoods near the center saw multiple offers, sight-unseen bids, and quick flips. Out-of-state buyers compared San Antonio prices to California or New York and called it a bargain. Now, the reversal has arrived. For many households, the basic payment on a starter home is no longer a simple choice. Add in rising taxes, higher insurance, and student loans, and the monthly housing bill feels less like a launch pad and more like a trap. Some of the investors who flooded in during the frenzy are trying to exit at the same time, which adds supply. A few were dropping rents and listing units for sale, trying both doors to see which one opens. San Antonio also has a split market that becomes more obvious in a slowdown. Older houses in established areas can come with long repair lists, while newer builds come with association dues and long commutes. In good times, buyers tell themselves they will deal with those trade-offs later. In tougher times, they use those same details to push prices down or walk away. Appraisers start paying closer attention to recent closed sales, and those numbers can turn fast when even a small cluster of owners accepts less than they expected. The hardest-hit buyers are the ones who believed this city was immune. They closed on homes in 2021 and 2022, thinking that even if Austin wobbled, San Antonio would stay strong. Today, they're staring at listings with asking prices that are flat or lower than what they paid. That is the moment when a bubble stops being a theory and becomes personal. The city is still full of life and opportunity, but the idea that affordability alone could protect San Antonio from the laws of math is already burst. Number 3. Houston. Houston is famous for reinventing itself. Energy, medicine, shipping, aerospace, technology. Every time one story slows, another rises. That constant reinvention made many people think that the housing market here could bend without breaking, that there would always be another boom to rescue any bad decision. For a long time, that belief felt justified because job announcements seemed to arrive faster than caution. The last cycle proved that even a flexible city can overreach. Years of strong job growth and easy money poured fuel on the market. New master-planned communities stretched out along every freeway. Inside the loop, modest bungalows turned into high-end townhomes, and prices leaped from one year to the next. Entire blocks changed character in a few seasons, and buyers started to assume that any stretch today would look brilliant tomorrow. Then the pressures stacked up in exactly the wrong way. Insurance costs shot higher for many neighborhoods, especially in areas that had already seen flood events. Property taxes followed the rising values and never drifted back down. Some energy and tech workers who once felt untouchable watched their industries wobble and bonuses vanish. At the same time, national buyers who once eyed Houston as a bargain began to back away, worried about climate risk, repeat storms, and long-term ownership costs that are hard to see in a glossy listing. You can see the result in the way listings behave. Properties that used to assume instant demand now need staged photos, aggressive pricing, and long negotiations. Open houses that once felt like crowded events are quieter. Investors who bought multiple units based on optimistic rent projections are cutting asking prices or quietly trying to unload at break-even. Families who moved in from other states expecting easy appreciation are discovering that values can move sideways or down just as easily as they move up, and that holding costs do not pause while they wait. Houston is not collapsing as a city. The jobs and the energy of the place are still real, but its housing market is working through the aftermath of a bubble that was built on the assumption that growth would cover every mistake. That cover is gone, and the numbers have to stand on their own. For some owners, that means accepting a smaller gain. For others, it means facing the possibility that the market will not bail them out at all.
Number 2. Dallas. Dallas loves big stories, and the housing boom was one of its favorites. Corporate relocations, gleaming towers, restaurant rows that never seemed to sleep, and suburban belts full of brand-new rooftops. For many buyers, owning in Dallas felt like buying a ticket into a permanent success story, a way to ride the same wave as the skyline. That narrative slipped into dinner conversations and open house tours until it almost felt reckless not to buy. The bubble here was fueled by confidence and credit. Professionals in finance, tech, and corporate services took on large mortgages, trusting future income to grow into the payment. Investors bought condos and single-family homes in bulk, expecting endless tenants for towers and cul-de-sacs. The city welcomed each new project as proof that the story was still climbing, as if cranes themselves guaranteed prices would always follow. The unwind does not look like abandoned skyscrapers. It looks like friction at every level of the market. That luxury condo that would have sparked bidding wars in 2021 now gathers only a few cautious offers and needs a price cut to move. Mid-tier houses in once frenzied neighborhoods are sitting through multiple weekends, even when staged beautifully. Starter homes at the edge of the metro are hitting a ceiling because first-time buyers cannot bridge the gap between wages and payments, especially after taxes, insurance, and long toll road commutes. Dallas is also feeling the strain of office uncertainty. Downtown and uptown towers are not as full as they once were, and that spills into demand for nearby neighborhoods. People unsure about their future at the company are less likely to borrow aggressively or stretch for that dream house in a hot school zone. Without that constant flow of confident professionals bidding up prices, the air leaks out of the market, one soft appraisal at a time. For those who bought at the top, this is where the bursting bubble feels real. Appraisals come in lower than expected. Refinances no longer unlock easy cash. Lines of credit are harder to tap. Appreciation stalls or reverses. In a city trained to expect constant ascent, a flat or falling price chart becomes the loudest alarm, forcing people to ask a hard question: who bought too late? Number 1. Austin. Austin was the poster child of the national housing craze. Music, sunshine, and a booming tech cluster turned the city into a remote work trophy. For a while, it felt like there was no price too high to claim an Austin address. People waived inspections, wired cash from across the country, and treated houses like tickets to a lifestyle. Bidding wars were not a risk, they were the script. The aftermath has been brutal. As tech layoffs rolled through and easy money dried up, the same forces that pushed prices straight up began dragging them down. Homes that would have sparked feeding frenzies in 2021 now sit for months without strong offers. New construction on the edges of the metro has turned from a limited opportunity into a wall of supply.
Investors who bought entire streets of new homes have watched values step down from that peak, one price cut at a time, and rental demand is no longer strong enough to hide the loss. The most striking shift is psychological. For years, buyers in Austin acted as if they were lucky just to get in at any number. Now they compare rents to mortgage payments and discover that renting can be thousands of dollars cheaper each month for the same floor plan. House hunters are no longer asking how high they need to bid. They're asking how low a seller is willing to go and whether it makes more sense to wait another season. That change in attitude is what really punctures a bubble. In some neighborhoods, you can walk down a block and see the story play out sign by sign. A listing comes online at a number that would have made sense 3 years ago. After a few weeks, the price drops. After a few more, it drops again. Eventually, a seller who once dreamed of a giant gain is just hoping to get out without writing a check at the closing table. Builders nearby start offering incentives and rate buydowns, quietly resetting expectations for the area. Austin is still a creative, magnetic city. People will keep moving here for the energy, but the housing market that once treated every buyer like a lottery winner has already vanished. The bubble has burst. What remains is a more ordinary, less forgiving reality, where prices have to match incomes, holding costs matter, and timing the market can be the difference between building wealth and watching it disappear on a screen. For anyone who still believes Austin real estate cannot fall, this chapter is the correction they were sure could never happen.
These 10 cities tell the same story in different ways. A military town where investors believed in everlasting demand. A beach city that leaned too hard on out-of-state money. Corporate hubs that assumed the career ladder would always climb smoothly. Tech centers that forgot what happens when the music stops. Texas is not finished. It will reinvent itself again. But the idea that you could buy anything, at any price, and trust that the market would save you, that era is over. If this breakdown helped you see through the noise, do one more thing before you go. Subscribe to Discover the Nation, tell us in the comments where you live or where you were thinking about buying, and share this video with anyone who still believes that Texas housing only moves in one direction. Because the bubble has already burst in these cities. The question now is who adjusts, who gets stuck, and who sees the next shift coming in time.